Hi, folks. Welcome to Lassoing Leadership. I'm your host, Garth Nichols.
And I'm the other host, Jason Rogers. And I have to say that I am super excited for this episode for a couple of reasons.
Yeah.
First, Garth, this is my favorite Lasso episode of all time. So I'm
Wow.
pretty excited to dig into it. Yeah, it's saying something really. And we've got a great guest today. But before we get to our guest, Garth, I know you're excited for a couple of reasons too. And one of them is you've actually got some good feedback. What have you heard out there?
Yeah. I wanted to share with our listeners that the episode that we did with Quinn Simpson on coaching has received some great feedback from two of my colleagues. One, Adam, who I work with at Havergal, and another is Tracy, who we've had on the podcast actually.
Right.
And or we will have on the podcast, or we've had her on the podcast. I can't remember. But she and Adam both said that Quinn did such an excellent job of defining what coaching is, and really the mindset and special nature of truly coaching. So I wanted to give that shout out. And if you haven't checked out the episode, listeners, please do, because Quinn brings a ton of great energy to that episode. So there you go.
She really did. She really did. And
Yeah.
what that's one thing, Garth, but I know there's a lot to be excited about. What else are you up about when it comes to today's episode?
Well, because we are in the second of a bit of a trilogy within Ted Lasso. Like these three episodes, Signs, Sunflowers, and then We Will Never Have Paris. I think these three are really significant episodes, and they build on each other. So I'm excited to talk about this one with our special guest, Leslie Macbeth. Les is a former colleague of mine. We currently work together in Cohort 21. And we do some work at Havergal College, where she works for Future Design School. We've had Les in Future Design School in the past at Havergal, and we'll be doing so in the fall at the start of this year, because they do great work around design thinking, excellent mindsets, teachers, entrepreneur, and now they're doing a foray into strategic thinking and generative AI. So needless to say, Les is a future thinker in education. I've left out a ton of information here, Les, including your work with Google. So why don't you take over and introduce yourself?
For sure. Thanks so much for having me on today, guys. I feel like what actually happened is that I cornered Jason and bullied him my way onto the show. But really appreciate being here. I'm a big fan of Ted Lasso and of you two as well, so I'm happy to be here. So I like to describe myself as an experienced designer on a mission to make learning more relevant, engaging, and fun. And so I'm director of special projects at Future Design School. I've been with FDS for the past 8 years since we were an early stage startup. For those who are unfamiliar, Future Design School is an education advisory firm. We work on helping schools to build skills and competencies in students by helping them to create exceptional learning experiences. And we provide schools with strategic planning, professional development, along with other resources that educators and leaders use every day. And we work all around the world. I think we've got about 50,000 teachers that we're working with right now, including heads of schools, district leaders, superintendents, post-secondary institutions. And as Garth mentioned, we also build educational strategy for some of the world's top companies like Google and Apple.
Amazing.
Garth, you really did leave quite a bit out of the intro. Les, welcome to the show.
It would take too long.
Excited. It's fair. I mean, I know Les a little bit as well. I got to meet you 6-7 years ago now at West Island College. I remember first running into you, and you were kind of the first person to introduce me to the idea of design thinking. And I remember thinking that this was something that would change the game in education. That whole thought around human-centric design, what FDS was doing then and what they're doing now, is super inspirational. So we are so excited to have you here. And I am so excited to get into this episode, Garth. So let's get going. Hey, buddy.
Yeah, let's do it. And just as a note, we have had previous episodes that we've talked about design thinking a lot, the innovator's compass and those types of things. So this is a great theme, like a thread we've got going through the podcast. Jason, let's get into Sunflowers. What's the episode summary?
So it's my honor to do this. Okay, so we've got Sunflowers. AFC Richmond takes a trip to Amsterdam for a friendly match while there's no trophy on the line. This episode is packed with wins for the team's personal growth. Ted and Coach Beard explore their adventurous sides with a unique tea, what shall I say. Meanwhile, Roy Kent finds himself surprisingly bonding with Jamie Tart over cycling. Love those scenes. And who knew they had both had such hidden depths? Rebecca gets a history lesson from Higgins on the joys of jazz, learning that sometimes the best things in life come from embracing the unexpected, which we see with her in the boat. While the episode might be a bit light on goals, it is a gold medal for leadership lessons. We see the best teams are built on trust and shared experience, even if those experiences involve questionable beverages or 2 left feet on a bike. By letting his team explore their passions and forge connections, Ted proves once again that sometimes the biggest victories happen off of the pitch.
Wow. Jason, that was well read too. I wish we had this sound, like a sound guy, to help us with some music. It would have been great. All right, nicely done. With that, Les, we always start off with who was your favorite character in this episode. So hit us with it. Who's your favorite character?
All right. So when you asked this question, I wanted to say Beard, because to me, he's the ultimate risk taker. He's my favorite character. I mean, look at his relationship with Jane. He just keeps putting himself out there and getting burned and going back again. You know, he's not afraid of failure in any way. But I think actually my favorite character in this episode is not a person at all. It's the city of Amsterdam. So Amsterdam is a city. Yeah. Okay. going out there, guys. So it's a city that inspires people to look at the world differently. It's actually a place that truly shouldn't exist. It's built below sea level on a peat bog. It's designed with this wild set of constraints that led to a really creative approach for city building. And for context, for those who don't know my background, before I worked in education, I worked in urban planning and design. So I'm a big cities nerd. And Amsterdam was actually the first city that I fell in love with. It was the first big European city that I ever went to. And it was also coincidentally the first intentionally planned city that served as a model for town planning until the end of the 19th century. But the interesting thing about it is actually the role that it plays in this episode, because it just so happens that it's a city that's designed to get lost in. If you're not familiar with the layout of Amsterdam, it's a city of these concentric rings of canals. And so for those of us accustomed to a grid system of streets, where if you start out walking south on Fifth Avenue, you keep walking south. In Amsterdam, you might strike out going south on the Prinsengracht, but then it ever slowly turns east and then north, and then suddenly you're back where you started. And the architecture is wild. The houses are really narrow. Nothing's at right angles. And so it kind of gives you this overall feel of being like Alice in Wonderland. And I know that, that's also associated with the drugs, but as Ted found when Beard revealed that his mushroom tea was kind of a dud batch, it's not just about that. It's really because it's a city that sort of breaks all the rules. And so it provides a really amazing backdrop for this episode, where each character is kind of going on their own adventure. And I think it plays a character, and that the lesson that it's teaching us is to learn the importance of changing our perspective, of taking some risks and not being afraid to get a little bit lost. And as leaders, I think that this can be difficult because we're often supposed to be charting the course for others. And so it takes courage to let down your guard sometimes, as we saw Rebecca reluctantly do with her mysterious stranger, or to try something new like Roy learning how to ride a bike, or go after your dreams like Higgin, to really think about becoming your true self like Colin, or like Ted did, putting his ideas out there even when he wasn't an expert, and looking at the game from a new perspective. And so yeah, I think the character of Amsterdam sort of inspired all of that to happen by inspiring people to look at the world from new perspectives.
Well, that's a first. Okay, the city wins the day, but this episode's officially now sponsored by Tourism Amsterdam. We're thrilled to be part of that sponsorship group, and we encourage everybody to go visit Amsterdam and explore the wondrous space that Les just described. But honestly, all joking aside, I can't help but agree. Having visited Amsterdam myself, I see everything that you're laying down here, and I can't wait to get back there and see that character in person. Garth, try to top that. Good luck.
Yeah, I love that idea, Les. Where what might a space do? Like, we talk often in education around space as the third teacher, and I think that you've highlighted that really well through this episode. Love it. For me, my favorite character is the stranger, aka the man in the houseboat. He's my favorite character in this episode because the space that he takes up and that he creates and the space that he leaves for others, i.e. Rebecca, his ex-wife, his daughter. He's really about being in the moment. You can tell there are wounds from his journey to get there, but you can also see that they're worth it. So I find him like the embodiment of like be present and helping others be present, and a bit of stoicism to him as well, right? Well, I'll talk about that a little bit later. Sorry to harp on this, all that, like talking about stoicism in the last couple episodes, but I can't help it because these 3 episodes that we're in the middle of right now really are about being present. And I love the way that the stranger brings that out in Rebecca.
Now, Garth, I've done enough of these with you in the past. I know you're not done, so why don't you just tell us a little bit more about what you're thinking?
All right, sure. The word that the stranger keeps repeating and that Rebecca keeps tripping up on is gezellig. I can't even pronounce it properly, but roughly translated, it means, they talk about in the episode, it means cozy, fun, but it really doesn't translate that well. So from what I see and hear from the stranger in the show is that it means to be in the moment and to savor the moment. And I love this as an option for Rebecca, who, as I mentioned in the previous episode, is having a transformational experience in Amsterdam. And we see this when at the end of the episode, she's singing the song 3 Little Birds by Bob Marley, a song that in previous episodes she said she hated. And now she's come full circle and that everything will be all right if you're in the moment. Just a thought, but I really do. I love that word. They keep harping on it. Jason, enough. Let's get to Roy Kent. Or yes. Will we?
Well, no. How could it not be in this episode, Garth?
Yeah, you're right.
I mean, for all the obvious reasons, his passion for coaching Jamie, his vulnerability in learning to ride a bike, the way he expresses vulnerability is open, amazing. But I'm going to pick on a spot that I think is really easily overlooked, and it's in the first 2 minutes of the episode. I love him for the comments he makes at the start of it all when he's in a press conference with a reporter. Most people will have forgotten this. And I'm going to have to paraphrase a little bit to keep this in the PG category, but you might remember after losing terribly, he's confronted by a reporter and asked if they're nothing without Zava. And he says, who cares? It's a effing friendly, a pretend match. This is a pretend conversation. You're a pretend person with a pretend job. And I'm having a really hard time to pretend caring. And I think this is an amazing leadership lesson. And I love him in these moments because it's about putting the highs and lows in perspective and remembering that, there'll be good and bad days and all of that's totally okay. And it's time to move on when it's time to move on. And so, it's a little bit of a leadership lesson, but I mean, Roy Kent brings it top to bottom in this episode. He's a true star here. So speaking of leadership lessons, Les, I'm dying to get over to you after that Amsterdam bit. I can't wait to hear what you have to say about your leadership lesson from this episode. Why don't you hit us with it?
Yeah, so for this, I want to talk about middle level leaders, particularly in education, but I think it probably applies to other contexts outside of school as well, and some of the challenges that they face. And so for me, one moment that really resonated was the challenge that Isaac McAdoo faced as a new leader and a captain. We see him, he's risen through the ranks because he was a great football player and he's gotten this new role as captain of the team. And now in a hotel lobby in Amsterdam, he's faced with this challenge of trying to determine a path forward for the evening. And Amazing. He tries different approaches. He tries consensus building and he tries being democratic and giving voice to others, but nothing seems to be working. And with so many potential options for this one precious evening in Amsterdam with no curfew, how does he get his team on board with a single plan? And I think this is something that we've seen often in our work with middle level leaders at Future Design School. So we're often brought in by schools to help them to develop and write their strategic plans and then do the more challenging or hard work that follows of actually implementing those plans and being successful in measuring that success. And we use an approach called cascading OKRs to do this, where every leader, middle level leader, knows exactly what their objectives and their key results are. But we often find that middle level leaders are in this similar situation to McAdoo, where they've been promoted to leadership because they were great educators. They excel in their classrooms, they show drive, interest, curiosity, ambition, all those great things. And so they get elevated to these roles. But then what happens is they're often left to flounder as they quickly realize that leadership is actually a lot different than teaching. They're lacking some hard skills, like they don't necessarily have that business acumen around acting on strategic priorities or managing people or projects or budgets. But there's also the bigger problem that most people want to be people pleasers, and that the new leaders often struggle with responsibilities like negotiating conflict, having those tough conversations, the inability to please everyone, or picking between two evils, because oftentimes leaders are making decisions and there isn't one good or obvious choice. And they don't always get the opportunity to unpack for other people why they're making those decisions. And we see this with McAdoo. He really wants to find consensus on the team, and he sees himself at the same time as being on the same footing as his peers. But in fact, he's been elevated to this role and he needs to provide that direction. And we see this frustration, when he slams his hands down on the table and is trying to get everyone to make a decision. And so I think there's lots of different ways that we can address this situation. What we've been doing at Future Design School is working closely with schools to help them prioritize that leadership skill development through an action research inspired approach. And so schools are bringing us in to design and lead these experiential leadership and coaching programs that tie leadership training directly to the school's strategic plan outcomes.
Nice.
So essentially, we're giving schools the opportunity to both check off those priorities, but also help middle level leaders develop those critical skills through ongoing coaching and applying a lot of the concepts actually that you guys talk about on the podcast here of like servant leadership and deep reflection and building their own capacity. And if you're interested, this is a bit of a shameless plug, but we have our most recent Future of Education report is focused on middle level leadership. And there's the whole section. And actually, Tracy, one of your other guests, is featured in it as well as a case study. So
nice.
I also just love the way that this ends, that, they end up having a pillow fight of all the things they could do in Amsterdam. I think it goes to show that trusting your team can yield unexpected results.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love that. And yeah, middle leadership, you're right. It needs care. It needs some attention. So thank you for that. And also I just want to build on that a little bit, because for me, the leadership lesson is the same. It's like from Isaac McAdoo and the team, the obstacle is the way for this team. In the end, they embrace their differences and conflicts, turn it into a fun little pillow fight, a healthy release of energy while building camaraderie that is different than like a red light district experience or going to a fancy party. So what was holding them back? This conflict, and they embraced it. I love that. Jason, what about you? What leadership lesson do you have?
Well, before I get into the leadership lesson, I'd like to make a shameless plug for you and I. If FDS is looking for a Ted Lasso consult in any of these, you know how to get a hold of us, Les.
Nice.
We're here and ready to do the work. And I do love both of your leadership lessons. You're totally right about McAdoo and his leaning towards consensus building, democratic style leadership. Yes, they can work, but they're not always the most appropriate leadership style to take. However, they're sometimes the most appealing, particularly to new and middle leaders. And I think that's totally true. However, for me, I think Ted and Beard teach us a valuable lesson about the power of divergent thinking in leadership. Sometimes to solve impossible problems, we need to get ourselves the time and the space to think freely and differently. And I think this can be achieved not necessarily through tools such as psychosylvan or additionally through having non-work related experience with your coworkers. We see it in Team's pillow fight. We see it when Rebecca and the mysterious stranger. We see it in Higgins and Will at the jazz club. We see it as Roy takes on bike riding. When we, learn things when we're outside of our comfort zone, this is when some of that divergent thinking can really come to fruition. And I think we see it through multiple modalities. And I think that's really, really important in our leadership. So I think that's what they're pointing to here.
Nice. And again, like Leslie, you hit the nail on the head there. Amsterdam makes all this happen.
It does.
Right? I love it. There's tons in here. So perhaps a title a little more telling than Sunflowers is necessary. Let's take a stab at renaming this episode.
Yeah, I think building on what Jason just said there, that idea of getting out of your comfort zone and changing your point of view, I would call this episode a leadership trip, changing your perspective.
Nice.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely perfect. And I think it relates to a lot of what you shared earlier, Les. Do you mind if I jump in with my rename?
Go for it.
Thanks. All right. So I'm going with Greenlight District. I really think this episode is about greenlighting new ways of thinking and embracing creative problem-solving approaches. Let's greenlight a few good ideas. I mean, really, what can it hurt? Ideas succeed and fail, but if we don't have ideas, I don't think we have anything. Green Light District. Garth?
Yeah.
Your turn, buddy.
Yeah, I really like that one. I went with something a little bit divergent here. I went with Leadership Unplugged. I think that's a good name for this episode because there's a significant moment when the obstacle becomes the way, but only after they disconnect.
Yes.
McAdoo says, put your phones away. Rebecca, think of Rebecca here. I think of Ted as well. They do their best work when they're disconnected to give their full selves to the moment.
Love it.
And we can all do more of it when it comes to unplugging and being in the moment. And I think that's a big part of why this episode resonates with me. All right, Les, Leadership Challenge. We're wrapping up here.
I just want to say I hadn't noticed that about the unplugging piece, but the fact that Rebecca lost her phone, that's a great insight. And thanks for sharing that. Yeah. For the leadership challenge, I'm going to keep going on this idea of changing your perspective. And that's actually going to be my leadership challenge is how might we change our perspective and specifically about who we think of as leaders. And I think that sometimes if we thought differently about who is a leader and who could be a leader in our schools, we often think about people with titles and roles. But what if we gave folks without those roles or titles the opportunity to step outside their comfort zone and to develop their capacity? And so giving someone without a formal leadership role a project to lead and giving them that coaching and support. And I think it's hard sometimes to hand over something important to someone who might not have the background or skills yet. But this idea of trusting in the universe of, as we saw in this episode, the need to take risks and not be afraid of the outcomes, trust your team and shift your perspective in order to find success.
Nice.
Leadership challenge accepted, Les. That is an outstanding one. I don't have anything to add to that, but Garth, I sense you might. Garth, do you have a leadership challenge for listeners as well?
Oh, I really like Les's, but I would also offer just unplug, like in a meeting, be present. Leaders should role model. So try not opening your computer just for one meeting. See how it feels. Like notice if there's a difference in the contribution that you make or the value that you add or the value that you get out of that meeting. So yeah, just two considerations there. Thanks, Les.
I think I'd be remiss if I didn't add it's okay to listen to podcasts. I don't think you should unplug for podcasts, particularly ones about Ted Lasso and leadership. And if you're listening to this podcast, I really hope that you rate and review it and share it with your friends. If your name is Sarah and Sandra and you work for FDS, you should call us and find a way to get onto this podcast. And if you have reviews or comments you want to share with us, you know how to get a hold of us. So we're looking forward to hearing from you. Really appreciate our time today with you, Les. We've learned so much. This was a absolutely outstanding show. Over to you, Garth.
Yeah, Les, thanks so much. Make us think differently about space and design, make us think differently about who we are as leaders and what we can do, and then challenging us to raise up leaders who don't have a formal leadership role and give them projects and support them, which I think is the heart of leadership. So thank you so much. It's great to have this conversation with you, Les. Can you take us home?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks again for having me, guys. And until next time, keep leading the Lasso way.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Les. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Les.